My best friend's boyfriend starts DMing me on Instagram. He confesses that he had a crush on me when we were in college together, and I told him that I did too. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. From that day on, he would DM me every single day and we would just flirt back and forth. I started feeling really guilty, and I told him one day I can't do this anymore. That's when he told me he also felt guilty and that the best thing was for us to stop talking, so we did. I was so sad. A few weeks passed by and my best friend asked me if she could have the apartment all to herself because she's planning a romantic dinner for him. I said yes, but I felt so jealous. I left the apartment because I realized that I was so in love with him. I went to the supermarket and ate a whole pack of Oreo cookies and went to the movies. I get a text message from my best friend asking me to come home immediately. My stomach sank and I thought she had found out. When I get there, she's crying, and she says that he broke up with her. I asked if he said why, and she said because he was in love with another woman. My stomach sank again. I was there with her the entire night while she cried, knowing her boyfriend left her because of me. Part 3 is up.
Story time about how I faked being pregnant for 6 months. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I repeat, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram.
I'm in my late 20s and I have a really successful career. I make plenty of money, I own my own house, and I have 2 cars. But I've always failed in relationships. I had a long-term relationship in my early 20s, but I broke up with him because he just wasn't pulling his weight. I paid for our extravagant lifestyle. He would basically help me with my work and then expect me to pay him. Also, I paid the rent, I paid for the cars, and I paid for every single dinner date we ever had. We also had a joint bank account, which was a huge mistake on my part, because ultimately I was the one earning all the money. After 4 years of dating, I decided to break up with him and I told him to move out of my house. I felt free and I started dating right away. I met this guy one night and he was amazing. He complimented me all the time and made me feel really good about myself. But here's the problem, I tend to fall in love really easily. After that night, that guy and I would talk every single day. He would come over to my place and we would have dinner.
But 2 of how I faked a pregnancy for 6 months in order to keep my boyfriend. After I finally convinced him to move in, I knew that I needed to get pregnant as soon as possible. My goal in life is to be a mom. And because I had so many failed relationships, I knew that I needed to make this one work.
The first 2 months of living with my boyfriend were really good. But of course, I quickly wanted to get pregnant. I also knew that the only way he would marry me was if I got pregnant, so I got to work. I stopped taking the pill and I didn't tell him, which I know sounds terrible, but here's the problem, I was not getting pregnant. I was off the pill for 3 weeks and nothing happened. I got so desperate, I went to the mall and got a pregnant woman to pee on a stick, which of course came out with a positive result. I went home that night and showed my boyfriend the stick and he was so surprised. He asked me if I was taking the pill, which I said yes, but he got really upset and told me that I probably got pregnant on purpose, which I denied. But then he said the magical words. He said, "I guess we have to get married now." I was so beyond happy, but the problem was that I really wasn't pregnant. So I started gaining weight like crazy. Anytime he left the house, I would eat tons of junk food. I would go late at night to the supermarket and buy tons of junk food. I get Doritos, chips, cookies, and cake and ice cream. I basically ate anything that was sugary. 2 months later, I had gained about 30 pounds, and it looked like I was really pregnant. But my relationship started to fall apart. My boyfriend was upset all the time, blaming me for having gotten pregnant. 6 months into my fake pregnancy, he decided to break up with me. I begged and begged him, but he said he didn't want to be with me and that he needed to be free. That's when I dropped the whole charade and told him I wasn't pregnant. He literally blew up in my face. He actually grabbed a chair and threw it into the TV. He grabbed his stuff and ran away. Of course, he blocked me from everything so I couldn't contact him. 3 days later, 2 of my cars had been stolen from my driveway, and part of me knew that it was him. But a week after that, he actually reached out and asked me if I wanted to try at the relationship again. But here's the thing, he doesn't have much money, so he can't live the lifestyle I was giving him. I'm pretty sure he only wants to come back because of the money, but I kind of still love him. What should I do?
Story time about how I'm still in love with my toxic ex. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I repeat, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. This is really complicated, but please hear me out before you start judging me in the comments. Ex and I dated for exactly 1 year. When we first met, he was super charming, cute. I mean, he was like the perfect boyfriend. My family loved him, but gradually he started changing. The more serious we got about the relationship, the worse he became. For example, at the beginning of our relationship, we always used to hang out with our friends. And sometimes I would hang out with my own friends on my own. But 2 months into the relationship, he began guilting me. He would tell me that I would rather hang out with my friends, which wasn't even true, and then I would end up staying home and then he would go out with his friends. He would also tell my parents sometimes that I needed to be taught lessons, like how to respect men and stuff. My parents detested him. One time he came over for Thanksgiving and basically told me that I needed to go change my clothes. He even said that I looked like a whore in front of my cousin. After that, my cousin really hated him and began doing her own research. She found that he was liking girls' pictures on Instagram and that he was leaving dirty comments on their pictures. Once she found all this information, she told me and I confronted him. He told me that he had every right right to comment on anyone's pictures because it was just the internet and it wasn't real life. I kind of had to accept what he said because I didn't want any more problems. I asked my cousin to stop searching stuff, but she just didn't let up. Almost every single week, she would send me screenshots of things that he'd comment on girls' pictures. Finally, I told my boyfriend that my cousin had found all this out, and he basically forced me to cut her out of my life. Now, I know what you're thinking, why would I stay with him? But when things were good, they were really good. He was super loving, affectionate, he always wanted to be with me, and he always prioritized going on dates and having fun. He would always surprise me with fun things. One time he planned this beautiful picnic, and we even stayed in the park and spent the night there. But then he would manage to ruin everything by becoming really jealous and controlling.
My dream job was to work in marketing, and I just happened to land this internship at a really popular fashion magazine. When I told him I got the job, he acted really strange. He didn't even congratulate me. A few hours later, he told me that I was trying too hard, and that he didn't want a girlfriend that was going to be at work all the time. He also asked me how much I was going to be getting paid because he wanted to make sure it was less than what he earned. So in other words, he was jealous and envious at the same time. Then he insisted that I work around his schedule, so I could only work the days that he was working. Then he told me that if I wasn't spending enough time with him because of my new job, he would break up with me. I took that as the last straw. It was my dream job, but he was making everything terrible. While my entire family was so happy for me, I was crying in bed at night. The next morning, I woke up and texted him and told him that I didn't want to see him. He ran straight to my house. We got in his car to talk, and I proceeded to tell him everything I thought. Then he turned it all around and told me that I wasn't the girl that he fell in love with, and that if I didn't change, he would break up with me. Part 2 is up. Of how I'm still in love with my extremely toxic ex. After I told him that I needed him to change, he basically turned everything around and told me that I wasn't the girl that he fell in love with anymore, and that I was the one that needed to change if I wanted to continue in the relationship. And to top it all off, he kicked me out of his car. We didn't speak for about 2 weeks. During that time, I started at my dream job, and everything was actually going pretty well. I didn't have the pressure on top of me about him not wanting me to work, and my life was actually getting better. My skin started clearing up, and I even started losing weight. In other words, I was really happy. My parents and family were so happy too. But then I see that he starts posting other girls on his Instagram. I knew that he was doing it on purpose, so I tried not to get upset, but I just couldn't help it. Then I made a huge mistake. I messaged him and asked him if he still loved me. Then he called me and we talked on the phone for about 4 hours. By the end of the phone call, we were back together. And guess what? We even agreed to moving in together. I made him promise that he wouldn't be jealous anymore and that he would stop trying to control everything I did. He promised up and down that he would never be that way again. But literally 3 days later, he comes over super drunk, demanding you know what. I said no because my parents were home and I wasn't going to do that in the house with them. Then of course he starts threatening me again, saying that if I don't do it, I don't love him and blah blah blah. So I took advantage and I kicked him out of the house. Then he sent me an essay of a text message breaking up with me and telling me how he doesn't love me anymore. It's been 2 months since that happened. Once again, I'm doing great at work. My family and I are super happy, but I actually miss him. Not only do I miss him, I'm so jealous all the time because I see he's posting girls on his Instagram. I miss being with him and I miss having fun with him, but I don't miss always feeling scared and nervous. I even tried dating a few guys, but nobody compares to him. A few weeks ago, I went on a date with this really nice guy. We connected and went on a few more dates. I posted on my story that I was on a date and my ex went crazy. He actually showed up at the restaurant and told me to come out and talk to him. And I did. I literally left the guy that I was on a date with to go speak to my ex. He told me to leave with him and I said no. He grabbed my purse and threw it on the ground and told me that he would never speak to me again. 3 days later, he was back in my messages begging to see me. But the guy that I was on a date with actually really likes me and asked me to be his girlfriend. I don't know what to do. I love my ex and I want to get back with him, but I know he's crazy. But this new guy's really nice and really caring. What do I do?